Blowing ad budget on metrics that look great till the CFO sees them, that's bull spend. And marketers are calling it out in Dashboard Confessions.
I remember telling my boss, it'll be good for the brand, when leads were slow. Yeah, it wasn't.
Cut the bull spend. LinkedIn lets you target by company, job title, and more. Advertise on LinkedIn. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a $250 credit. Go to linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Warning. This show contains material that some listeners may find troubling, including discussions of intense horror movie themes, explicit language, movie spoilers, and women speaking. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, horror fans. It's Eleanor with a quick reminder that if you want to send in your questions for a bonus Q&A episode, you have until May 28th to send us your questions to pod@horrorsandbox.com. That's pod@horrorsandbox.com. You can also comment your questions under our Q&A posts on TikTok and Instagram @horrorsandbox. We can't wait to answer them. Now, enjoy the horrors.
Hello, horror fans. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Eleanor.
And welcome to Horror Sandbox, the podcast where we dig around in horror films and see what we can unearth.
That's right. Before we get started today, Charlie, how are you coping?
I am coping pretty well right now, actually. The neighborhood pool opened, so we went down there, and it's so cute. My oldest daughter is getting so into swimming. She has a floaty, but we're teaching her how to actually swim without it, and she's doing really good. She keeps asking her dad if she can swim to the other side of the pool, and he's like, well, we need to work up to that. But it's really cute. She's having a good time, and I'm having a good time sitting in the shade with the baby texting you about horror movies. So it's been great.
It sounds lovely. It's so much fun when they start to really get into swimming and they're not just splashing. My littlest, as you know, is epileptic. So we are always terrified when he's anywhere near water. One of us has to be in the pool with him. Listeners, don't worry. He's a very mild case, but it's just one of those things that if it happens in the worst possible place, then you know, very scary. But he's starting to get a little bit braver with the water too. So
oh, that's fun. Yeah, it's funny. She doesn't want to leave the pool. It's been kind of cold, and she will literally be full bodying, shivering and purple lips, and just will not get out of the pool. It's so cute.
She's so stubborn. I wonder where she gets it.
Oh yeah, I wonder. But how have you been coping?
We planted some tomatoes the other day with my little kids, and they had so much fun. We're doing it from seeds, so we're going to watch them grow on our little deck, and I probably bought too many packs of seeds, and I got a bunch of different varieties, but my littlest can eat his entire body weight in tomatoes, so I think this will be good.
We're growing tomatoes too, and I will say, if you're doing them from seeds, you probably didn't buy too many, because you'll lose at least half of them. We do them from seeds most years too, and it's so fun. So that's exciting.
Okay, let's get into this. What did we watch, Charlie?
So this week we watched the 2024 film Heretic. The IMDb movie summary for this movie is: two young religious women are drawn into a game of cat and mouse in the house of a strange man. It's written and directed by Scott Beck and Brian Woods, and it's starring Hugh Grant, Sophie Thatcher, and Chloe East. And we can't dig around in our horror sandbox without our trusty rusty tools. So, Eleanor, what is your Bloody Shovel Award?
I went in early with most understated IMDb movie summary ever.
That's a good one. But you know what? I'm glad it's understated because I had no idea what I was getting into with this movie, and I loved every second of it.
But what about you, Charlie? What is your Bloody Shovel Award?
Mine is a best yoga pose, and we'll talk about it when we get there.
Oh my God. Best, most cursed? You could go a lot of directions with that one.
A lot of directions, but it is certainly impactful. That is for sure. But okay, let's get into it. The movie opens with a shot of a mountain and two women sitting on a bench talking about how the size of Magnum condoms are the same as regular condoms, and it's just a marketing gimmick. Let me warn listeners that I wrote a lot of dialogue for this summary because I think it is all important. So I'm sorry if it just sounds like I'm reading quotes. I'm going to do the best that I can. Sister Paxton says, it makes you think, what else do we believe just because it's marketing? Like if you grew up hearing the Book of Mormon is fake, then you probably just believe it's fake, which has the potential to be an intellectual conversation about belief in religion, but then Sister Barnes begins to talk about how she thinks they are bigger because her sister's husband has a elephant trunk-sized penis. Then it slowly zooms out while they're having this ridiculous conversation, and on the back of the bench you see a condom ad that says, "Who says size doesn't matter?" And can I just say, I was immediately hooked. I didn't know what I thought this movie would start like, but holy cow, what a wild way for it to start. I loved it.
I love the line about, if they lied to us about needing magnums, imagine what else they lied to us about. And I'm telling you, this was basically my deconstruction, my personal magnum opus, if you will.
I love it. So then the conversation continues to get quite crazy, and Sister Paxton talks about how she once watched a porno and a woman off camera screamed that everyone could hear the couple in the porno having sex.
She calls it pornography. Like she awkwardly says the word. It was kind of just hinting that they don't often talk about this.
Right. She doesn't know what the proper way to say it is. It's funny. And then, so then she goes into detail about how she could tell the two people in the porn were mortified by the women hearing them. And she said, she had this moment where she was looking at the woman's face in the movie, well, or in the porn, whatever you want to call it. And she has this moment of realization where she's like, this is my life. This is what I do for money. And she just looked mortified. And somehow Sister Paxton draws the conclusion that this moment proved to her that God's real. We have souls. It's divine confirmation.
Yeah, she's doing this in a righteous way, but at least based on how I grew up, this is 100% how religious people talked about the lives that they pretend to hate. It's kind of like a voyeuristic thing. They'll literally use prayer circles as like a gossip mechanism. You want to talk crap about other people or talk about, somewhat taboo subjects. Will you do it in the term like, oh, I'm just praying for this person?
Yes, like all prim and proper. I think too she uses it here to want to talk about, to kind of test the waters of Sister Barnes too, to kind of see have you ever watched? What are is this a conversation I can have with you? But she's keeping it righteous as well.
Right.
Sister Barnes doesn't know how to handle this conversation and asks if Sister Paxton watches a lot of porn.
She's like, oh, I was just watching porn for the plot. I mean, for the prayer requests.
Which is so funny. So then they get flustered and they move on to how they hope they'll do well in their mission and get some converts.
And I should mention, they're flipping through the Book of Mormon while they're having this chat, and the passage that's on screen references being delivered from bondage. It is, I think it's Mosiah chapter, I think that's how you say that, Mosiah chapter 22. So if any Mormon or Exmo listeners want to comment on some additional significance here, I'd be curious your take on it.
Oh yeah, that would be interesting if someone has some insight. I didn't even catch that. So from this scene, they climb a flight of stairs with their bikes and they're talking about random things, and they have a list of people they have to visit. And then in general, there's talking about how Sister Paxton has had no success so far in converting anyone.
Did you hear, to motivate them to go up the stairs, one of them says, our future husband gets hotter with each step we take.
I think it was Sister Paxton, and I loved it. It was cute. So it then cuts to them walking through town with their bikes, and everyone's ignoring their attempts of like spreading the word. They keep saying hi, and people just walk by. And they come across a group of 3 girls in the street filming a video of some kind. And Sister Paxton mentions like how much she loves the girls and their energy, and those girls then come over and ask to take a picture with them. But in a twist, right when they take the picture, the girls proceed to pants Sister Paxton to see her magic underwear and run away.
Yeah, it's so cruel. And for anyone who's not familiar, the magic underwear reference, which will continue to come up, they're referring to an often mocked practice by Mormons to wear a special type of a sacred undergarment. You could do a whole podcast episode about just that, so we won't. If you're interested, just Google it. And this is like, it's so messed up and cruel because it's basically an assault. And I have been this super indoctrinated and sincere person, and this kind of shit just pushes people like that further into the institution, which, by the way, might be part of the point.
Oh, yeah, it is. I did hate this part because Sister Paxton, she seems so genuine and kind, and it's just like, give her some grace. It's just sad what these girls do to her, so.
Yeah, and it's illegal.
Yes, that as well. Literally assault, as you said. So Sister Paxton, she's clearly had a rough start to the day, which is about to get very much worse, and is crying as they approach the last house for the evening. They lock up their bikes to the gate of the house, and Sister Paxton talks about how everyone makes fun of them, and she mentions the South Park musical, and Sister Barnes said she listened to some of the songs, and they're actually pretty funny, which they totally are.
Have you seen the Broadway show?
I haven't. No, I have not. I heard it's good, though.
I saw it once live, and the Mormon church sent missionaries to stand outside, and they all had these pamphlets, and it said the book is better. It was adorable.
That's funny. That's actually, that's kind of smart. I would probably, after seeing that Broadway show, be interested.
It's good marketing.
Yes, it is good marketing. I haven't seen the Broadway show, but I have seen the South Park episode, and it's pretty funny. Anyway, so after that, Sister Barnes reassures Sister Paxton and says, "Who cares what people think? You're awesome." It cuts to a scene of them knocking on the door, and they wait in the rain for a long time. And while they're waiting, Sister Barnes looks at her phone to see the list of houses they have to go to that day. Sister Paxton practices her speech while they just get absolutely soaked in this storm.
I want to mention Sister Paxton is wearing what's called a CTR ring. It stands for Choose the Right. And this is actually referenced again later. Most Mormon kids will get these when they're around 8 years old.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, it's a Mormon culture thing.
Huh. I didn't notice, never would have known. So finally, Mr. Reed answers the door after having them wait outside for a really long time, and he's holding a watering can while he opens it.
But you don't see any plants, do you?
No plants in sight. And Sister Paxton immediately goes into her pitch, but Mr. Reed stops them and asks if they want to come inside the house out of the rain. And they confirm with Mr. Reed that he has to have a wife or a female roommate who lives with him since they can't come inside without a female chaperone. He says that he does have a wife, and they go in, and Mr. Reed says his wife's making a pie in the oven, will be right out. He offers to take their coats and then walks back to what we can assume is a kitchen. But before he does that, he asks if they're okay with the fact that the walls and the ceiling have metal in them. And neither woman bats an eye at this and just says, yes, that's fine. Which, I don't know. That would already, I would have some red flags here.
It's an odd thing to say. And the way he does it, it comes across like, oh, sorry, the house is a mess. It's that thing. So, we'll talk about this more because they do it a few times. They are conditioned to reassure him that everything is fine.
That's true. And to just be pleasant hosts.
Yes.
Or not host, the opposite.
Guests.
Pleasant guests. Yes. To the situation.
Yeah. He also mixes up their names. And I think he's pretending to not know their names after they introduce themselves, which is super weird because they are quite literally wearing name tags.
Yeah, it is super weird. His little weird gimmick at the beginning is very strange, which I guess everything he does is pretty strange. He leaves the room and the girls are left alone. They look around, and I do want to say that Sister Paxton points to this cross stitch on the wall that says "Bless this mess," and it is cute. I mean, if he wanted to make people feel comfortable, that would have got me, because I love a good cheeky cross stitch. The house, it definitely looks dated, and there's old wallpaper and furniture, and the lighting's super old. So, and there's also a suspicious amount of clocks. Why are there so many clocks? There's at least 4 clocks in this room alone.
I think it is just to add tension because you can hear them ticking, but I also think it's supposed to make it seem like harmless old people live there, and it's just part of his ruse.
Oh yeah, the decoration and like the big wooden clock in the corner definitely give like old people vibes. As they're looking around the room, Sister Barnes notices that one tiny window on the wall has a butterfly or a moth on it, and it flies up to the lamp and it keeps hitting it like a normal bug would do. And Sister Barnes also notices a photo of a boy with a dog on the couch.
And this, I think, is an actual picture of a much younger Hugh Grant with his actual dog. But it's interesting because there are 0 family photos and there's no evidence of a dog.
Yeah, it's a very strange, it's I think the only photo in the whole house that we see. Also, I wanted to say, I thought about it later with the moth to the light. Is this just like a moth to the flame, like metaphor for the sisters? Like they're just gonna do exactly what he wants and go to the flame.
Yeah, it very well might be. And I also think that the lack of photos of any other people tells you what he thinks about people.
Yes, he's definitely a weird loner. Okay, so Mr. Reed comes back to the room with a candle and 2 Cokes on a tray, and they ask if Mr. Reed could bring his wife into the room, and he says of course and tells them to have a seat. He then makes a note to tell them before they start, he thinks it's good to be religious. So he goes into the like, I'm glad you guys are religious. And they try to start their pitch again, but he stops and asks where they're both from. Sister Paxton mentions she was born and raised in the church in Utah, and Sister Barnes, she's not as deeply rooted. Her mom converted to Mormonism after her dad died.
Do you think that the Cokes were drugged?
Well, I don't know now if I think they were drugged, but in this scene I certainly did, and I was very proud of them for not drinking them because I was like, please don't drink those Cokes. But I don't know if by the end of the movie I thought they were. Did you?
So same exact reaction. I thought they must be drugged, and maybe they have some training about safety where they don't accept anything unless it's like a sealed bottle of water or something. I don't know that. That's just speculation. But upon watching that, like once you get through the whole movie, I think it would not make sense for him to drug them if he wants them to participate in this dumb thing that he does.
Agreed. Yeah, I don't think there are actually drugs in there because then I don't know if you want to call it experiment or whatever the heck he does, it wouldn't work the way he wants it to. So Sister Paxton finally does really get into her pitch about how Joseph Smith was a very curious person who couldn't find a religion that fit him in the same way that Mr. Reed can't find one. And that's why he started the Mormon faith.
I gotta be honest and say I related to Sister Paxton so much. I was never Mormon. I do have family that is, but I grew up evangelical, and I absolutely did this whole door knocking and faith sharing thing as a child, which looking back, I think that was kind of messed up because for one thing, if a pushy religious person shows up at your front door, you may have an instinct to like be kind of snarky to them. If their little kid is standing there, you're probably less likely to do that. So that's kind of messed up to put a kid in that situation and kind of use them as a prop or whatever. And I also think it's kind of messed up to have little kids going out there and trying to preach at strangers. Looking back, I'm like, it's kind of messed up. But I did really relate to Sister Paxton because I, too, was so sincere about all of that. I had questions that didn't get answered, which is why I am where I am now, but I could see myself in her so much.
Yeah, my experience is definitely, it's not nearly as intense as yours, and luckily I never had to go spread the good word, but I definitely hear you, and I agree with pretty much everything you just said, especially about using kids to do that.
One of my colleagues who unfortunately died in Afghanistan, he was Catholic, and he used to say, we don't proselytize, we just breed.
It's so true. The hardcore Catholics always has to have like 8 kids. Is that? Anyway. So during her little spiel, Mr. Reed cuts Sister Paxton off again, and he actually recites the origin story of the Mormon Church, and he pulls out this like well-read and tabbed Book of Mormon, and Sister Paxton sees it and goes, wow, you've read more of that than we do. We should be learning from you. And Mr. Reed then asks what kind of pie they smell. So it's weird because they keep trying to talk about faith, but then he keeps pulling it back out. It's strange. And Sister Paxton says she smells blueberry. And then he asks Sister Barnes how her father died. So it's like this very jumpy like dialogue that's all over the place. And Sister Barnes says her dad died of Lou Gehrig's disease under her breath, kind of. And then Mr. Reed thinks Well, he at least pretends to think she said blueberry disease, and he makes a joke about it until Sister Paxton corrects him, and he's like, oh no, I'm sorry, that's like a really horrible disease. It's a strange moment.
It is, and it's another example of him apparently pretending to be a doddering old idiot. And I do think this is part of a ruse to kind of get their defenses down a little bit, because he tries to seem harmless and maybe a little stupid at first.
Yeah, I think he's doing that. I also think he's like trying to see how much they're willing to share and how like people pleasing they're willing to be in this moment. But yes, he's also trying to just like either get their guard down or confuse them. It's all weird. Mr. Reed then asks if she's seen any signs from her deceased father trying to communicate with her from the other side since he passed. And Sister Barnes looks both really sad and really mad here, and she's holding back tears and just shakes her head no. And at this point, she gently rubs her thumb next to a scar on her arm.
Which does come back later.
It does. And Sister Paxton takes this really awkward moment to break the tension and say when she comes back, she wants to come back as a butterfly just to follow around her loved ones. And she says very specifically she wants to land right on the tip of their finger so that they know it's her.
And this is such an interesting thing for her character, because it shows she's not dogmatically aligned 100% with the LDS Church, because she's talking about reincarnation, which is not their thing. Well, kind of, but whatever. Look it up. But certainly not coming back to this planet as a butterfly to kind of comfort your loved ones. That's not a Mormon belief as far as I know. So I thought this was interesting.
It is interesting. Like, the more you reflect on what Sister Paxton says earlier here in some of the conversations she has, like, she obviously believes in the Mormon Church and feels it, but she clearly has some questions and her own beliefs in the back of her head as well.
Yeah, almost as if Mormons are people too.
Yeah, who would have thunk? So all of a sudden, while they're having this conversation, the lights go out because they're on like this timer. And Mr. Reed says it's time for pie and enlightenment. And he stays sitting and asks if he can ask them an icky question.
Which, oh my God, so gross. And then he makes them he asks them to do a drum roll for this icky question. It's so,
It's so gross. And the way that Sister Paxton like hits her stomach for the drum roll and she's like playing along. I hate it. It's a really awkward, gross moment. He then asks them how they feel about polygamy. And Sister Paxton answers it really awkwardly and is like, it's kind of weird. And then Sister Barnes steps in and asks if he's talking about it in a biblical perspective. And he said he's mostly fascinated by the fact that Mormons used Mormon revelation to say God spoke through a human to reverse a controversial practice.
The history of this is, it's kind of interesting. In 1890, what he's talking about here, the Mormon Church was getting pressure from U.S. Congress over their polygamy practices. And what do you know it? Their prophet happened to get this just in new revelation from God telling them that they need to chill with the whole sister wife thing.
Right. And yeah, it's obvious what the church was doing here, and he's just trying to call them on it and see what they believe about it. But I actually think, so Sister Barnes responds pretty well to this, and she justifies it by saying at the time when the church was established, they needed polygamy to help the community grow in that same like breed versus preach practice. But later, after they had enough members of the church, it was removed because it wasn't necessary anymore. So she kind of ignores the fact that it came through a prophet at all and just talks about the practical need for it.
Yeah, which I'm sure is probably one of the talking points that they get, because I think this probably comes up a lot to missionaries.
That's a good point.
But I love Sister Paxton just goes, she agrees with him. She's like, yeah, it's sketch for sure. And again, the movie is not portraying these missionaries as completely sheltered or ignorant of some of the issues that their own institution has.
Yeah, that's true. And so Mr. Reed then makes this incredibly valid point that he worries Joseph Smith used the practice of polygamy to legitimize his affairs with other women, which, like, I'm sure he did. Then he quotes, "With great power comes great responsibility," to which Sister Paxton says, "Spider-Man." And Mr. Reed gets annoyed and he says, "Voltaire." And so this whole use of iteration, that's obviously huge as we continue to talk about this movie. I really like it, and I really love the way it comes back to bite Mr. Reed in the butt. It's the best.
Yeah, it is. It's very cleverly done. But also, you're not more clever than someone because you related something back to a cultural reference from a couple hundred years ago. And in fact, I'd argue it makes you less clever and less relevant. Somebody connecting a human truth to like a current mainstream popular idea is actually a lot smarter, and it's a far better indicator of their emotional intelligence than a fucking Voltaire quoting podcast bro or whatever he is. And by the way, let me preview some of what I will talk about later by saying this. I think this is extremely revealing of who he is. And also, Voltaire never said that. This quote is misattributed to him.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I didn't know that it was misattributed to him.
It's such a quick, like, great power, great responsibility. And she says, Spider-Man. And he's like, Voltaire, in like this demeaning way. There's so much to unpack just in that little back and forth. I think it's extremely revealing.
I agree. Obviously, like, it's fun, right? It's fun to find those little ties. Like, we talked about it with the Minotaur myth. But if the new things didn't exist, the ties wouldn't be fun to explore. Like, I don't know. I agree with everything you said. And I'm excited to talk about it more at the end. Miss Reed then asks, if revelation from God is filtered through man and man sins and lies, then how do we know if any of it's true? Which, again, is a valid question. And Sister Paxton says, we know it's real because of how it makes us feel. And Mr. Reed gets excited and says, that's exactly right. He says it's their personal relationship with God that matters. He then changes the subject again and asks, which is the best fast food restaurant? And Sister Paxton goes on this cute little rant about, and like just lists off all of the fast food chains in order and somehow settles on Burger King as the best one, which no, I'm sorry, it's not. But then Mr. Reed asks about Taco Bell, and Sister Barnes quickly says, we don't talk about Taco Bell, which I Googled this. I Googled if that was like a Mormon thing. And obviously it comes back later in the movie, but I think this is funny. I think that little phrase has been like adopted as a Mormon church as like a joke now. Because
oh, that's cute.
When I Googled it, that's the only results I found. Nothing about this movie. It was like, it just was talking about that, how that quote is attributed to the Mormon church. But anyway, I mean, not the Mormon church itself, but the culture.
Yes, the restaurant Taco Bell is actually a metaphor for polygamy in the early Mormon church history. And in this essay, I will.
Honestly, I was looking for something like that, but it turns out it doesn't exist. So instead of this fast food discussion turning into that, they come to the conclusion that somehow Wendy's is the best fast food restaurant, which, meh.
And then he says, I've never had a Wendy. And then he draws attention to how awkward that was. And I'm sorry, put straight to jail. But again, you'll notice the missionaries immediately try to put him at ease for his little gaffe. Don't be polite to men who creep you out.
Yes, I caught that as well. And I don't know if you do you listen to the podcast My Favorite Murder at all?
I have, yes.
So they have a line, because obviously a lot of the true crime stories that they cover were women just trying to be polite and then ending up in these awful situations. So they say fuck politeness. It's like one of their taglines. And I just love it. So Mr. Reed then ties back the fast food discussion back to religion. And he says when he was studying theology, he didn't want to settle on the Wendy's of religion.
Have you ever had a Wendy's Frosty?
Oh my gosh, yeah, of course.
Have you ever taken some hot Wendy's fries and dipped them in a Frosty?
Of course, yes.
Because that sort of thing could actually change someone's religion, I think.
I agree. And this is such a funny coincidence because I was just talking to my friend from the UK like the other day, and I told them that they have to go try a Wendy's Frosty with French fries immediately.
I think this is very serious, and I am not joking when I say this might be how I made my husband fall in love with me.
Oh, that's so sweet. You'll have to tell me that story.
Just when we first met, I don't even remember why, but I brought this up and he's like, what are you talking about? And then I made him try it and he loved it.
Oh, yeah. Back in the day, me and my bestie, when we were having rough weeks, would go meet in a Wendy's parking lot at like 11 p.m. and just sit there and dip fries and Frosties and chat. It was the best.
This is girlhood.
Yes, it is. Mr. Reed, instead of indulging in the Wendy's Frosty experiment, said he spent years studying and working on building his relationship with God. And at the end, he found out that the more you know, the less you know, which I also relate with. And as he's saying this, he blows out the candle on the table. And he finally says, after studying every religion, cult, sect possible after a decade, he never wanted to find the one true religion, but unfortunately he did.
Did you notice the timeline here? Because he says he did this for a decade, and then by the time he was 50, he was malnourished after studying the fast food parts of religion for that long. So did he start college late? They don't really clarify this.
No, they don't clarify much about his past, which I think is interesting because you can fill in a lot of holes. I was thinking like maybe he was getting a master's or like a doctorate degree, which, yeah, it would be later in life that he gets that. Or maybe it was something like he dove into after a tragedy. Maybe he did have a wife at one point. Who knows? I don't know.
My actual theory is that he's a liar, and I'll get into that. But I think it's, if you are making this up, why would you say you started in your I don't know. It just didn't make sense to me.
Oh, he's without a doubt a liar. I agree with that. I'm excited to talk about it more. So the girls, they finally had enough. They're starting to get creeped out, and Sister Barnes asks to meet his wife. And Mr. Reed says, of course, and he goes back down to the hallway to get her. And as he walks out of the room, he resets the timer on the lights, and they turn back on. While the girls are in the room alone, Sister Barnes says they should wrap this up and asks if they've gotten any messages on their phone from the church, and they haven't.
Sister Barnes says that she does not want to spook him. And this is what I mean. Like, he has trapped them. They don't really realize it, but they are still worried about how bad it will look for their church if they listen to their gut here and leave. So once again, don't be polite to men who creep you out.
Agreed. But I will say it's nice because they do try to leave. I appreciated that part of it, but
yeah, no, that's true. They don't want to spook him, but because they're conditioned to represent their institution in a certain way.
Yes, 100%. Sister Barnes then slowly turns the candle on the table around in this really tense scene, and you see her face first, and she is shocked, and then it pans over to the candle, and it's a blueberry pie candle. So at this point, we know there's no pie. Mr. Reed then comes back into the room, and he says she's finally ready and tries to lead the girls down the hall. Sister Barnes pauses and tells Mr. Reed they'll be right there, but they're getting a phone call and they have to go take it. And Sister Barnes asks if they should leave, and Sister Paxton agrees that they should. So at this point, they do walk to the door, and they realize they don't have their coats, so they take a minute and they discuss if they should leave because they won't be able to unlock their bikes, and it's like a 2 to 4 mile walk without their bikes. And worth it. Like, go walk without your bikes. Better than dying. And they agree with my statement and try to open the door, but it's locked and there's no way to open it. Sister Paxton looks down the hall to see if Mr. Reed is coming, and he's not. And they take a second to look for other ways out, and there's like this tiny window in the room, but they decide neither of them can fit through it. And they try to call the elder from the church, but there's no service. And meanwhile, there's this crazy storm happening outside, and they both start to freak out and then agree to go ask Mr. Reed for help. The light timer goes off again, and it's dark, and Sister Barnes tries to turn it back on before they leave the room, but it doesn't work. So they slowly creep down the hall, and they run into this statue that they think it's a person at first, but it turns out to just be a statue. And do we know what this statue is?
Yeah, it was created for this movie, and it's a bust of Epicurus, who was an ancient Greek philosopher. And do you recall that he is one of the figures who appears in Dante's Inferno in the sixth circle of hell?
Oh, no, I didn't. But
do you remember what the sixth circle of hell is? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Is it? I think I do. Is it Heretics?
It's Heretics.
That's nuts. That's so cool. I love Dante's Inferno so much.
It keeps coming up.
It does. Dante's Inferno, metal music, horror movies, all my favorite things. Who would have? They're all tied together.
They're iterations.
Oh, man. So they giggle at the fact that the statue creeped them out, and they walk past it, and they enter a second room. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of love this room. I love its vibes. It's church-like. There's an altar in the middle of it with candles on either side. There's a church pew in front of that. And then on either side of the altar are 2 doors. One is green and one is purple. And then on both sides of the room, there's like these nice, well, not nice wooden bookcases, but like tons of wooden bookcases just filled with books. And there's like little alcoves for desks and stuff. And it's just, I don't know, I'd chill in a room like that.
It is very pretty.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Mr. Reed walks out with this large box and welcomes them in, and Sister Barnes thanks Mr. Reed for being so generous with his time, but the church needs them back, so they have to go. And he seems upset, and he says, oh, they were just getting on to something. And then he says he's been really impressed with the women, but he understands that they have to go. And he shows them their coats and then goes to go put the box down on the other side of the room. And did you notice the song playing here is just like a butterfly that's caught in the rain?
I did not on my first watch, but on my second one, I definitely did.
Yeah, I'll give credit to closed captioning on this one. Every time I saw butterfly come up in the closed captioning, I was like, pause. But yeah, I just think it's interesting how intentional the song choices are.
Oh, yes. I watch all my movies with closed captioning, but somehow I missed it on the first watch when it came out.
It goes quick. So they grab their coats and there's water that's like dripping into this bucket from the ceiling and it's being caught on this like bamboo catch thing. And what is this? Do you know?
I do. I looked it up. It's called a shishiodoshi, and it's a Japanese garden feature that literally means deer frightener. So it's supposed to keep animals out of gardens, but I think it's just used here to build tension, kind of like the ticking clocks.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Because in my mind, it was like another way of keeping time, but that's really interesting. Deer frightener. So they put their coats on and they realize that the key has been switched from Sister Barnes' pocket to Sister Paxton's, but it is there. And they asked for Mr. Reed for help because a door's stuck, and Mr. Reed very matter-of-factly responds by saying, oh, the door won't open again. And they ask him to unlock it or open it, and he says he understands what they're asking, but it won't open again until morning, because he then goes into some weird explanation about how the deadbolts to the front door are on a timer, and he lost track of time while they were talking, and he allowed them to lock without telling them. And so now the only way for them to leave is through the back of the house.
The dread that I felt the first time I watched this, but honestly, even rewatches, it's very chilling because he is so nonchalant about telling them that they're trapped and he's trying to play it off like it's normal. Like, oh yeah, that door kind of sticks. Oh yeah, that door is on an elaborate timer and the house is now deadbolted and you'll have to go through the back. Like it's creepy.
It is creepy, and he offers like no explanation as to why it would do these things. And yeah, just the tension builds from here. And they insist that he go back and open the front door, and he says no, it won't open again. And he promised them that they'll be safe to go through the back door. Sister Barnes mentions that it's a little unusual to have a door that locks on a timer that can't be unlocked, which, like we said, it is. And Mr. Reed says, yes, well, I see that, and just like leaves it at that. And then he says he's self-aware enough to know how this looks, an old lonely man with two women locked in his house, but he assures them that they're welcome to leave and he'll give them space to make their decision. There's some awkward silence, and then he says, to clarify, I've been trying very hard not to pressure you into anything, so you shouldn't have felt the need to fabricate some story about how your ward needs you. It's perfectly fine for you to leave.
And then for our non-Mormon listeners, a ward is kind of just another word for a congregation. It's a little more complicated than that, but you can think of it in the same way. So he's just talking about them saying that they're needed back at their church.
The sisters continue with their story and insist that they do need to get back to the ward. And Mr. Reed says he reminds them that when they came inside, he asked if they were okay with the metals in the walls and the ceiling, and they said yes. So then he makes the observation that, well, they don't get a signal in here to make a call. So he reassures them again that they're free to leave at this point.
And I'm sorry, but this is abuser bullshit. Like, oh, see, I told you that's what's going on. See, you knew the walls were metal, therefore you knew you couldn't make a call. You were asking for it. It's the whole like, yeah, but what was she wearing defense for gross predators. It's just so stupid.
It is stupid. He definitely is toying with them and gaslighting them, and it is absolutely like abuser type talk. It's gross. Sister Barnes asks which door takes them to the outside, and Mr. Reed responds with, do you have a preference? Sister Paxton then asks if they should have a preference, and Mr. Reed says that is a fair question. She then asks if his wife could please step in the room and walk them to the back of the house. Mr. Reed says he'll go ask and walks to the door, but right before he opens it, he turns around and he says, can I ask you a question first? He then goes, do you still believe that my wife is behind that door despite all the evidence that says otherwise? And tells them that he wants them to think about it, and he wants them to think about it in the context of their belief. And this is a moment that I felt that dread that you felt earlier. Like, this was a moment that I was like, okay, yeah, if these women weren't in trouble before, they certainly
are now. Also, the theme of these young women constantly downplaying their own gut feelings because they've been conditioned not to make men uncomfortable. It needs to be screamed from the rafters of the wards or whatever.
Yeah, at this point, they are being far too polite.
And this is not victim blaming. This is a criticism of their institution that is trying to indoctrinate them in this way, in my view.
Well, that and just culture in general. I would say. Yeah, just politeness in general. Mr. Reed starts a rant about how they believe in God because someone told them at a young, impressionable age that God is real, even though they have doubts when they got older and they saw evidence to the contrary. He asked them if they went on believing in something they knew wasn't true just because they were afraid of what it might mean if it was a lie.
There's a very unsettling close-up of his grinning face here, and it's so creepy. He doesn't look like Hugh Grant at all.
I agree. I knew nothing about this movie before watching it. And from the poster art of this movie alone, I had no idea it was Hugh Grant. He's doing that grinning face on it. And I had no idea until I started the movie. Was pleasantly surprised because I love me some Hugh Grant. But yeah, it does. When he does that creepy smile, it does not look like him.
He is very good in this role. I hope that gets across because I hate his character because he's so good at it.
Agreed. I love some Hugh Grant. I hate some Mr. Reed for sure. Sister Barnes asked to use his phone and he says he doesn't have a phone. Sister Paxton compliments his home, says it looks like a church, and asks him if he built it. And he said his wife built it. So Sister Barnes says they're going to leave through the back door of the house if that's okay, and slowly walks towards the green door. She opens it slowly and looks terrified while Sister Paxton asks what it is. She shuts it and goes to the purple door, and this time Sister Paxton joins her and walks up behind her, and they both look down this incredibly long, dark staircase, and Sister Barnes says it doesn't look like it goes outside. It then cuts back to the church, and the elder is cleaning up for the night, and he looks out at the storm and notices that the two sisters never signed back into the sign-in sheet.
Did you recognize this actor?
He looked familiar, but I can't place it. I'm not sure where he's from.
It's Topher Grace.
Which was Topher Grace? What's he from?
That 70s show.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I see it.
Yep.
I guess with the bleach, because he's got really bleached blonde hair in this, doesn't he?
Is it blonde or is it gray?
Oh, maybe it's gray.
But
Regardless, it makes him look way different.
Yeah, he looks different.
That's funny. It then cuts back to the house, and Sister Barnes says they're regrettably uncomfortable with the situation. And Mr. Reed continues to gaslight them and says the back of the house overhangs a cliff. They would have seen it when they come in. And he says they have to go down to get out, but he says it with this weird accent.
Do you think this is a reference to Dante's Inferno as well?
I think so. I think he purposely does some stuff with Dante's Inferno throughout this that we see at the end, and I'll call it out when we get there. But yeah, I think it is. Do you think it is?
I think so, but I think it's a reference in a superficial way because he's superficial.
That's fair. That's very true. Sister Barnes says people will look for them soon, and Sister Paxton says there are witnesses. They passed some police officers on the way here into the house, so people know that they're there. Mr. Reed pretends to be taken aback, and he says he promises them that they're getting way too worked up. He says they should carefully consider their preference between the two doors, and they should make the right decision, and he asks them if they want his help. And Barnes says yes, and they go stand in front of the altar. He then says it's not a simple choice that should be made simply. And while they're walking to their spots, they notice a letter opener on the floor, which could be used as a weapon. And Mr. Reed then pulls out a game of Monopoly and asks if they've ever played. He also walks across the room and puts on a record that starts to play the song The Air That I Breathe by the Hollies. Sister Paxton looks behind her and notices what looks like a person kind of behind a curtain, but it's not moving. And Mr. Reed launches into a lesson about Monopoly. And he says over 1 billion people have played Monopoly, but only a fraction of those people have probably finished it. He says, maybe that reminds you of something. And he places a Holy Bible next to the Monopoly game.
Which, okay, that was kind of funny. I'll admit. I feel like some of the loudest people who yell quotes from the Bible haven't actually read the whole thing.
Agreed, 100%. He then pulls out a game called the Landlord's Game, and he explains that it's identical to Monopoly in almost every way. And Sister Barnes takes a moment to ask what his games have to do with them leaving, and he gets very seriously and says everything. And then he launches back into the game lesson and explains that the Landlord's Game was invented 3 decades before Monopoly, before a man sold the game as his own and never credited the original.
This is a real game. It was invented in 1904 by a woman named Elizabeth. I think it's Maggie is how you say her last name. And she invented it to teach people how unfair rents just enrich property owners and make the tenants poorer. So the kind of opposite of the point of the Monopoly game that the Parker brothers would eventually release. Mr. Reed's version of the events isn't quite right. A theme I think his character sticks to throughout this movie. But yes, it was real, and it is connected to what would become the Monopoly game that we all hate, I think.
I mean, that's true. I think 90% of the Monopoly games I've finished have ended with pieces being thrown across the table, but it's a good time. He then explains that he's talking about iterations. He says learning about these iterations are going to make them uncomfortable, maybe even sick, and maybe make them want to die. He then restarts the song on the record and asks if they've heard it before. They say no. Well, they shake their heads no, and he says he disagrees, but they'll come back to it. He then launches into like a 101 lesson about monotheistic religions of the world.
I'm going to disagree and say it's not 101. He is pretending to school them, and he is just incorrect. I'll get into it later. I hate him. He's stupid.
I'm starting to believe that perhaps he did not actually study theology for a decade.
He didn't study shit.
So he then pulls out a table runner thing that has a symbol for Judaism, one for Christianity, and one for Islam on it, and he calls these the big three. He lines up Judaism next to the Landlord's Game and calls it the original edition, and he puts Christianity next to the Bible and calls it Monopoly, aka the most popular edition, and then he puts Islam next to the newer, second more popular edition, which is just like a follow-on edition of Monopoly. And he asks for their Book of Mormon and puts it on top of the Bible and calls it the zany spin-off edition.
Yeah, and he takes out like it's like a Bob Ross themed Monopoly game to illustrate this point, which is funny. But
it
also,
was a good pick. It was a good pick.
Yeah. But also, this is another very stupid and wrong thing because he's specifically picking out monotheism because they are Mormons, but then he's about to launch into an explanation for his, ideas that involve a bunch of polytheistic figures to make his point.
Yeah, he's definitely not consistent in his arguments if you follow them closely. So he says that all of these games and written texts are iterations of the same source material. He also explains that they've heard the song they're listening to right now because they've heard the song Creep by Radiohead, which is a great song. I think I like it.
I do love this song, though I maintain that 90% of Radiohead sounds like very sad goats.
Sad goats. Well, now I'll never be able to listen to Radiohead again. Thank you for that. Oh my God, no. It's forever ruined. You're the worst.
I know. My husband hates me for this too.
Okay, so they say that they haven't heard Creep, which is sad. And then he does this like horrible rendition trying to sing it, but the lyrics are actually very fitting to the situation that they're in. And he explains that the Hollies sued Radiohead for stealing their melody, and then explains that Radiohead was later sued by Lana Del Rey for plagiarizing Creep in her song Get Free.
Have you heard that Lana Del Rey song?
No, I need to listen to it.
It does sound a lot like Creep, but it's not a copy. And I didn't hear it as much in the song from the Hollies.
No, I didn't get as much with the tie of the song with the Hollies to Creep. I mean, a little bit, but not like enough to sue. Do we know if they won any of these?
I did look it up and I don't remember, but I think you're pretty safe to assume that whatever Mr. Reed said is wrong.
That's a good call. He then states that iteration dilutes the message and obscures the originals. And I love that Sister Paxton proves him wrong about that later, but we'll come to it when we do. And he says Judaism is the OG and should be the most practiced, but only makes up 0.2% of the population, which he completely ignores the fact that the Holocaust existed, which thank goodness Sister Barnes does call him on that later. He claims this is because Judaism doesn't advertise their religion by selling it to people or sending out missionaries, and says missionaries are just salespeople for an organization. He then says he has an idea that he would like to sell them. He turns off the lights and music and turns on a projector. It cuts back to the church at this point, and the elder is leaving, and he heads out into the storm to look for the girls. Then back at the house, Mr. Reed is flipping through pictures on his projector and states his argument is that the holy texts are just an iteration of mythological stories. He says a story about a savior born to a virgin that could perform miracles and was resurrected was a very popular story for thousands of years before Jesus was born.
Don't worry, I'm going to go into all of this.
I cannot wait. I'm so excited. Back outside, the elder, he's visiting the various homes that the girls should have been to that night, but no one has seen them. And back at the house, Mr. Reed quickly shows the girls multiple examples of ancient myths that are similar to Jesus in some way. And it's at this point that I actually texted Eleanor and I said, I would like to be stuck in a home with Hugh Grant discussing ancient theology. He'd have to force me to leave. I obviously later retract this statement, but in this moment, I feel like it would be a really fun discussion to nerd out over.
I think the little rant and like his little lesson that he's doing, it does scratch a certain part of your brain. Like, oh, that's interesting that he's connected all these things. And to have that conversation in this very beautiful study of his, it would be cool until you realize not only is he completely wrong about basically everything he says, but he's also extremely evil.
Yes, yeah, it's obvious. It doesn't work out in the end, but it's a fun idea in the beginning here. So from all these stories, Mr. Reed says it's impossible to ignore the fact that all these stories iterate into Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And he says, can you imagine people thousands of years from now accepting Jar Jar Binks as an important religious figure? And I did think this was pretty funny.
Well, it is funny, but also that's not weirder than, say, Scientology. And
not at all.
And the Jar Jar impression that he does here, that would actually break me. I think this would be the moment.
That would be the moment. I do love it. I mean, not love it, but I understand what you're saying there. The girls, unfortunately, they don't get the Star Wars reference, or they're just too nervous. And Mr. Reed turns the lights back on and says it is all terrifying. He said he's scared just saying it out loud. He then writes belief on the green door and says if God is real, he watches us masturbate and has such a fragile ego. He only helps us when we shout his praises, and he hates gay people even though he made them, and that's terrifying. He then writes disbelief on the purple door and says, if there's no God, we're all just horny, tiny, microscopic ants flying on a rock through space with no hope to achieve eternal life, which is also terrifying. And I will say, not in these words exactly, but these are questions that I probably ask myself every day. And do other people not do this? Is that not a normal thing?
I mean, people fight whole wars about this, so I'd say everybody does this.
That's fair. That's a good point.
But it's super weird how with both belief and disbelief, he really focuses on sex and horniness.
You're so right, which also brings up the fact that obviously there's male missionaries too, but he's only doing this trick on females, as we see at the end. So he clearly has some sort of bias, and that's probably understating it.
Yeah, he hates women and thinks he can control them because he's a piece of shit.
Yes, 100%. He then reads a quote from the 15th president of the Mormon Church and asks if they agree with the quote. They say yes, and he says, so either it's all true or none of it's true. He tells them to choose which door to go through based on their faith. He says that he believes all the churches that exist are fake and there's nothing holy here. He then throws the Book of Mormon on the ground while he's saying this, and Sister Barnes goes to pick it up, and as she does, she notices the letter opener right next to her that Sister Paxton noticed earlier. He comes back to watch the girls make a choice while drinking out of this really bright blue coffee mug that seems really out of place. And I don't know, do you think it's his mug or do you think it's from the women he murdered before? I couldn't quite place it.
I paused this so many times and I looked it up and I couldn't figure out what it says.
I will say I was actually reading about this movie on Reddit about something else and came across a comment that said they think it says hubby, which...
Oh, God.
Yeah. I will say I agree that the last three letters I think are BBY, but it could also say Libby or something like that, which makes me think, and he has nothing else that's this color in the house. So I'm thinking that somebody else probably owned it, but I don't know. I don't know for sure. So yeah, listeners, if you know or have a guess, let us know. Sister Barnes then says that she wants to know what's going to happen to them before they choose. And he says he can't even begin to answer that question as it hasn't happened yet. Sister Paxton tries to compliment Mr. Reed and says they've convinced them and they would like to leave through the door of disbelief since that's what he believes. But Sister Barnes doesn't follow and goes to the other door. Sister Paxton looks at Sister Barnes surprised and says, choose the right door. You know, the right, like they taught us in primary.
This is where her CTR ring, that very Mormon culture thing, that's where this comes back. That's what she's referencing.
I never would have guessed that. That's a pretty cool fact. Sister Barnes then says it doesn't matter what they say to him. He's not going to let them go through no matter what they do. She believes they're being studied and he wants to learn something from them based off their decisions. She then turns to Mr. Reed and asks what he has been looking for. She says the only thing that matters right now is what they actually believe, and because she thinks his rhetoric is thin and the metaphors he uses were offensive. She then calls him out for not acknowledging Jewish people's persecution and the Holocaust, also that he barely says anything about Islam and nothing about the differences between all the ancient myths he talks about earlier and Jesus.
Yeah, and she says one of these guys has a freaking bird head, and that is Mormon swearing.
It is the most impolite she gets, at least the first time she gets there, and it is funny. Her conclusion is that it doesn't matter what she believes. She says since they both believe in God, they should be honest and sincere with themselves and leave through the belief door. So Sister Paxton agrees, and they slowly go down into the basement while Mr. Reed closes the door and locks it behind them. They turn on their phone light and continue down the stairs to a second green door. And when they open it, it opens into this like dungeon room with nothing in it except one like folding table and a chair in the middle and no exit. There is a second door or staircase with the purple door that will not open. So you can assume at this point that both staircases led to the same room. The sisters discuss how he can't keep them there forever because the elders will come looking for them. So he's either going to have to let them go or kill them. Sister Barnes tries to find a way to climb out of the room, but the window is barred. And she says that they may not be physical threats, but they are intellectual ones and they need to challenge him on whatever he says. She also knocks a plank loose from the wall that has like 3 nails sticking out of it while she's trying to climb out of the window and then hides it. As they're doing this, they hear what they assume is Mr. Reed coming down the stairs and rearrange the furniture back to its original position. Sister Barnes gives Sister Paxton the letter opener and tells her to stab him with it because he won't see it coming from her. They come up with the code word magic underwear to say as a cue for her to stab him.
I actually loved her using the mockery of her religion as a weapon. It's like, good for her.
I like that too. Like, what a perfect code word. The door that they hear a person coming down opens and an incredibly like frail, dirty, cloaked and hooded woman holding a lantern and a pie steps outside of the door. And she kind of appears elderly at first because she can't walk well and she's kind of stumbling and seems weak. And they ask if it's Mr. Reed, but Sister Paxton shakes her head and says, Mrs. Reed. And this is the part where I said, okay, never mind. Maybe I don't want to be locked in a house discussing religion with Hugh Grant.
This was terrifying. I did not see this coming either.
I didn't either. And it kind of took me out of it a little bit because I was like so into this movie up until this point, and then I was like, oh man, it's gonna get weird now. But then it comes back. It saves itself. So the woman sets her pie on the table next to like this insane amount of dripping water that's dripping from the ceiling, just completely ruining the pie. It really bothered me, actually. I don't know why. And then she walks a few steps away and like contorts her body into this absolutely incredible backwards fold pose, and like her entire body creaks and cracks and she wheezes and it's nuts, and it is my bloody shovel.
Yeah, and with good reason. It's quite terrifying. And again, I never saw this coming when I first watched it. Her bones are cracking, her hands are folding behind her back, and then she starts to kneel down. So she's praying but backwards and like muttering to herself. It's so scary.
It's so scary. Whoever came up with it is brilliant. And it's so twisted that for a moment, I actually wondered to myself if she was doing the thing where like it looks like she's facing forward, but because she's wearing a mask, she's actually facing the other way, but she's not. Her body is just bending completely in the wrong direction. It's nuts. The fact that Sister Barnes is able to walk past her later when she's in that pose, I could never. I would simply never.
I don't know what I would do. I hope I would just start like checking on her, but everything is so weird. Who knows?
Oh, I would for sure freeze. I would not move. Right after this happens, Creep starts to play through a pipe in the wall, and Mr. Reed's singing it and laughing to it. And it cuts to a room that he's sitting in, and in this room is a wooden diorama of his house. And I would like to take a moment here to say, yes, listeners, I saw your comments, and I should have said trauma diorama in the Hereditary episode, and I'm sorry I didn't. I'll be utilizing it any moment I can in the future from here on out. Anyway.
Catchphrase.
Catchphrase. He's sitting in front of his wooden trauma diorama of the house, and he's taking like very meticulous timestamps of the events of the evening and moving the dolls to their correct locations that they're at in the house. It then cuts back downstairs to Sister Barnes carefully walking past the contorted woman, and she's going upstairs behind the other door that they didn't come down. And she notices when she goes up, there's another side door here that she tries to get into, and it's the door that Mr. Reed's sitting behind, but she can't get it to open. And she looks under the door to the room that they previously were in, and she sees a box of matches that got knocked onto the floor onto a rug near her hand. And she tries to reach for them, but suddenly the song stops playing and she runs back downstairs. Mr. Reed then goes into a spiel about how he had to be sure before he introduced them to this woman that's in the basement with them now. He says she's a prophet of God, and the woman that's all contorted on the floor starts to mumble some words in like a foreign language and then unfolds herself. And Mr. Reed says he invited them into his sanctuary to show them a miracle, and he needs a witness to verify that it's real. The woman, who I'll start calling the prophet at this point, lifts her veil and begins to eat the pie with her hand, and it's really gross.
I think the veil thing might also be a nod to some Mormon practices, but it could just as easily be a nod to really any religious practice throughout centuries.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely see that veil in a lot of even like ancient art and stuff. It's common. But yeah, I could see it for the Mormon practices too. As the woman is eating the pie, Mr. Reed says the blueberry pie includes wolfbane and belladonna, and it will kill the prophet. The miracle is that she'll be resurrected. The woman wheezes after eating the pie, and then she gags and her head smashes into the plate and she dies.
The poison selection is kind of interesting, but only a little bit. These are poisons that would have been known to the ancient world, so I think he's doing this in like a pretentious way, because you could be way more efficient with modern tools. It's basically the Voltaire quote of poisons.
Yeah, like he's trying to be like all elegant with it or whatever. Elegant and proper. Yeah, he's gross. I don't like him. Mr. Reed then forces the girls to confirm that the woman's dead by feeling her pulse, and while they lift her head up, she has a cataclysmic spasm. It startles the girls and they say she's alive, and he's like, no, she's not. That just happens. And they lift her head up again to verify she isn't breathing. Mr. Reed then tells the girls to watch the prophet as she'll be resurrected soon. And while they're watching to see if the prophet will move, they get startled by this loud bell ringing. And it's the doorbell to the front door. And Mr. Reed goes to answer it while the girls run up the stairs. They get to the top, the door's still locked. So they try to scream so when the elder answers the door, he'll hear them, but it's not loud enough to get through all the closed doors. In the living room, Mr. Reed answers the front door, and it's the elder from the church saying he's been looking for the sisters. Mr. Reed then lies and says of course they didn't come by, and him and the elder have a quick discussion about it. The sisters take this time to try to get the matches that are on the floor to start a fire in the basement so the elder will see the smoke and know that they're there. There's a tense moment where they almost get caught like pulling the rug with the matches on it towards the door, but Mr. Reed doesn't seem to notice. They're about to get caught when the doorbell rings again, giving them enough time to get some matches. The elders return to give Mr. Reed a booklet, and then he walks away, and this time we notice that the bikes are missing from the fence.
This scene is so much. We watch Elder Topher Grace come back, and it seems like, oh, okay, maybe he's got unanswered questions, or maybe he'll see the bike or something. Like there's this moment of hope, but nope. Just wanted to make sure he gave out his pamphlet for the church.
I know, it's so sad, because I thought when he rang the doorbell again that he was going to come back to be like, well, if they're not here, why are their bikes here? But then the bikes aren't there, so it's a bummer. The sisters then run back downstairs, and Sister Paxton notices that the prophet isn't in the exact same position that they left her, and she tries to tell Sister Barnes, but she dismisses it and instead goes to attempt to light the matches. And she's trying to light her coat on fire, but she is just failing every time, and it is so painful. And Sister Paxton keeps looking behind her to check on the dead body. And this scene's it's really well done. She looks over her shoulder and notices that the prophet isn't there anymore. And then you get this tense shot where Sister Paxton is just staring ahead, but she totally knows that the prophet is right behind her, but she won't look. And then the camera slowly pans to like a slow jump scare. I don't even know how to describe it. of the now alive prophet like right next to her.
It's super well done. It was so scary.
It was terrifying. I think it might be the best moment of the movie. The girls scream and the prophet starts to just puke her guts out, which puts out the last match that they lit. And she says, so this is what the prophet says. The conductor says my name, white clouds, not heaven. They unplug my brain. It is not real. And as she's saying the it is not real part, she puts her finger over her mouth almost in like a shushing kind of motion or like a shh kind of thing. And Mr. Reed comes down and thanks the prophet and then takes her away. And Sister Paxton's watching him take her away and notices that Mr. Reed almost seems angry towards the prophet as he kind of like pushes her through the side door.
When you first saw this, what did you think was going on here? Like, what happened with the prophet?
I will say at this point, I was like, I bet maybe this is just weird and she did come back from the dead somehow and this horror movie's going to take some crazy turn I wasn't anticipating with magic and things.
Yeah, well, I mean, this movie definitely takes turns. I thought she wasn't poisoned and that maybe, the wolfsbane and belladonna was just enough to like slow her pulse so she could fake being dead. I thought she was like either conditioned or in on it, so she was acting.
I had that thought too. I definitely had the thought that maybe it was just something that slowed her pulse down enough that the girls thought she was dead. But I don't know. At this point, I was worried about the way this movie would end, but I was pleasantly surprised that I was incorrect. Mr. Reed then comes back downstairs and says he knows one of the girls has been lying since they got there. He said he knows one of them has a very big secret because of the way that fire reacts to them. And then he asks the girls to tell him what they witnessed. There's some back and forth before Sister Paxton tells him what the prophet said. Mr. Reed responds with, well, now you know. I can show you God if you're willing to die. He said it won't be scary knowing that they'll come back. And he said it'll give them a comfort that no other religion can give them. Sister Barnes responds to this by saying it all makes sense now. She's been asking herself all night how he's going to make killing themselves look like it was their idea. She says he didn't show them a miracle. He showed them a magic trick. Sister Paxton takes this as her cue to get ready to stab him with a letter opener. She then tells him why they don't talk about Taco Bell. She says it killed her when she was 4 years old because of an E. coli outbreak. She was clinically dead, and while she was being operated on, she saw exactly what the prophet described to them. She says that it wasn't a prophecy, it was a near-death experience and a hallucination due to not having enough oxygen to the brain. Mr. Reed then goes into this weird tangent about how every time you remember something, you're not actually remembering the experience. You're remembering the last time you remembered it. So the memory of her dying is a memory of a memory of a memory that isn't real, which is more iteration nonsense, I think. And he tries to use this to assure her that they aren't talking about a magic trick. This is a miracle. Sister Barnes says, no, we're talking about magic underwear. But before Sister Paxton can move, Mr. Reed slices Sister Barnes' throat. And there's this insane scene where everything just gets silent and it's slow motion with intense music.
Yeah, this scene devastated me the first time I saw it. I really thought she would survive.
I did too. I thought she would survive through this scene as well. I was still rooting for her, and it was just so sad to see her die. In the silence, we see Sister Barnes screaming and fall to the floor and trying to crawl away and save herself while Sister Paxton runs up the stairs and starts to pound on the door trying to get out. Mr. Reed watches over them and smiles, and it's super creepy. And Sister Paxton collapses on the stairs crying, and then she whispers to herself, challenge him, while he's standing downstairs yelling at her not to be scared because she will rise again. Mr. Reed sits next to the now dead Sister Barnes, waiting for her to quote-unquote wake up. He says something is wrong and begins to cut open her arm, and he's digging around in there, and it's really gross. And he pulls out what he calls as an implant and says this is why she can't come back to them. He says she's programmed and she's not real. The candles gave it away. Sister Paxton then asks Mr. Reed to explain it to her. He then asks her if she's familiar with the Taoist concept of the butterfly dream. He explains the butterfly dream is from an ancient Chinese philosopher who asks the question, was I a man dreaming I was a butterfly, or am I now a butterfly dreaming that I was a man?
Yeah, this is a real thing from an ancient Chinese philosophical text. The question the writer seems to ask is, how can you know anything? Which kind of plays back to Mr. Reed's earlier comment of the more you know, the less you know, which, if he actually meant, he wouldn't have pretended to be so certain. But I'll get to that later.
Oh, that's a good point. Didn't even catch that. Okay. He then says he's come to the conclusion that they live in a simulation so advanced they cannot tell what is real and what is simulation. He says he notices that fire is hard to replicate, and that's why Sister Barnes was an NPC because of the way fire reacted to her.
Yeah, okay. The whole I'm a man who doesn't understand a woman, therefore she's a non-playable character thing. It's so fucking boring. I'm sorry. How lazy do you have to be? And it is interesting that he suddenly completely changes the narrative here. You know, first he was just asking questions about belief and disbelief, and now he's here trying to convince Paxton that Barnes was a robot or whatever, and she sees through him, to her credit.
She does, and it's amazing. And I will say, I mean, the NPC, like, whole theory or whatever you want to call it, it is pretty rudimentary. Like, I feel like we've all had this thought. Like, what if I'm the only person in the world that is knows what's going on and everyone else is fake? Like, who hasn't thunk it? So.
Yeah, we all have that thought, and then we turn 6 years old and we never have that thought again.
Exactly. He says after death, they'll all wake up in the real world and then ask what she thinks of that. Her response is, that's a theory. She doesn't think the implant was a microchip. She thinks it's a birth control implant. Mr. Reed questions this, asking if she's ever met a missionary on birth control. Sister Paxton says no, but her church would have made Sister Barnes feel ashamed, so she wouldn't have told anyone about it. She calls what Mr. Reed says a theory again, and he corrects her and says hypothesis, which is like a dumb point to make at this moment.
Yeah, he's just a actually internet troll.
He does give internet troll vibes, for sure. She asks if his hypothesis is testable, and he says no, it's a matter of belief like any religion.
Her whole pushback against him for the rest of this scene, I think it shows that she is extremely brave.
This, like, never saw it coming. Sister Paxton being so smart, so brave, like, it's so well done. I love it. It's really good.
You know, she seems a little naive, not totally ignorant, but in the beginning she seems very, a little bit naive and very sincere about her beliefs, but also she recognizes some of the issues with the institution of the Mormon Church. So you kind of expect her to be maybe a little, I don't know,
more easily influenced.
Yeah, or manipulated or something. But it's good. She's brilliant in this.
Yeah, she does a really good job here. So she then says that she doesn't believe it. She says she's not smart enough to explain why, she just doesn't. She said she did believe the miracle at first, but then it felt like something happened, something that Mr. Reed didn't expect, and now he's improvising the simulation theory and it's not sticking. And then she asks him if she's right, and he asks if she's right about improvising a narrative or that the simulation theory isn't sticking, to which she responds with a simple yes, which I loved. And he gets this like frustrated but proud grin on his face and then like cuts all serious and goes, high five. So he asks if she agrees with Sister Barnes that the prophet was just hallucinating a near-death experience, and she says no. I think you switched the bodies. She just hasn't figured out how yet. She says when the elder got to the house, it drew their attention to the stairs, which Mr. Reed would have known would happen. And she noticed when they got back downstairs from that moment that the woman at the table had shifted positions a little bit. So she thinks that when they were upstairs, another woman that looks just like the woman that died took her place at the table. And then when they got back downstairs, when the prophet quote unquote came back to life, she read a scripted prophecy. But at the end, when she said it was not real, she went off script. And this is what Mr. Reed is trying to recover from. He said, if that's right, then there would have to be another way into the basement. And he doesn't think that there is. And he like goes around the room hitting the walls and saying, see, there's no other way out. Sister Paxton then looks down and pours the water off the table to reveal a hole in the floor. And she starts to scrape the dirt away from where this hole is and finds the trapdoor that she opens.
This reveal was so cool. I never saw this coming on the first watch. I had no idea what was going to happen next.
Me neither, but I was super excited about it because I was like, yes, we're back to like not magic. Something really is actually happening, and let's see what it is. Miss Reed says that there would have to be a dead body down there if she's right. He asks if she's going to go down the hole to see if someone is down there, and she says she has to. He asks why she would want to do that, and she says because she wants to know the truth and because the only way out is through. And he said he questions and goes, Robert Frost? And she responds and goes, Swamp Thing. And I audibly cheered. I loved it so much. I loved that moment.
I did too. She's talking about the 1982 movie, and it's a callback to the iterations theme. And I liked her asserting her own interpretations of stuff like that. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, like it's this moment where she finds her confidence and like she knows that, hey, maybe what I know is an iteration of what you know, but I know it and I think I know it better than you. And it's so good. So he tells her not to go into the cellar unless she's prepared to discover the one true religion. She takes a deep breath and then climbs down. When she gets to the bottom, there's a body there, proving that she was right. And she looks up and says she knew it. And Mr. Reed closes the door. Sister Paxton then proceeds forward through multiple locked doors, and each room has various religious and cult-like symbols in it, and the doors have like these ritualistic-looking paintings and inscriptions on them as well. And she goes through each door, unlocking each one until she reaches the last door, which has their bike lock on it. She pulls out the bike lock key from her pocket and opens it. It leads to this like cold metal room full of cages with women inside of it. And there's water being sprayed onto them and they all look super sick and weak.
I saw a theory online that this spray might have like a mind-altering drug. And I mean, I guess maybe, but I don't think you need that because if you've starved and abused these women and kept them cold and wet and cramped, you've weakened them. They don't need a mind-altering drug in order to be controlled. But this does seem to explain the watering can that he was holding when he answered the door when we first meet him.
Yes, well, because he literally brings a water can into this room to fill their like dog dish water bowls up with. It's awful.
Because he's a disgusting piece of shit.
He is. And I agree. I think putting mind-altering chemicals into the water would actually hurt his ego. I think he wants to believe he controls these women on their own accord. So I don't think there's mind-altering anything in the water.
Exactly, which is also why I don't think he put any drugs in the Cokes.
Agreed. Yeah, I agree with that. Sister Paxton goes up to one of these women and gives her coat. And Mr. Reed comes into the room and asks if she's figured it out yet. Sister Paxton then recalls the events from the night and says when they first arrived, they were alone in the living room, and when they were there, he went back outside to unlock their bikes and move them. She noticed when he came back in, his hair was wet, like he had come back in from outside. She then said that they found out he returned the key to the wrong coat pocket, and at first they thought it was a mistake, but now she knows that it wasn't. He gave the bike lock to one of the prophets and told them to lock the final door with it because he wanted her to know the only reason she's standing there right now is because it's exactly where he wants her to be. She's not there because she chose to be. She's there because he made her choose to be there. Because he wants her to believe that the one true religion is control. Mr. Reed says that's exactly right and that religion is just a system of control. One of the women then knocks on a cage and Sister Paxton runs over to help her and tells her it'll be okay. Mr. Reed says they don't want her help. They're exactly where they chose to be. Sister Paxton says he killed that woman, but he disagrees and says she chose to eat that pie because of her profound faith and then says it's called drinking the Kool-Aid. And I don't know, do you want to talk about the Kool-Aid reference at all?
We can, and this is a little embarrassing. The Kool-Aid reference is referring to what's known as the Jonestown Massacre. Basically, this guy in the 70s started a cult, and as everything was kind of falling apart, he forced them all, either forcibly had them drink poisoned, it wasn't actually Kool-Aid, it was Flavor-Aid. He either forced them or some of them may have willingly drank it. But this is embarrassing because I didn't know what Jonestown was. I'd never heard of it until like 10 years ago when I watched this documentary on it, and I was like sitting there sobbing, like, oh no, this thing happened forever ago and I never, but for some reason I had associated that phrase because I understood the phrase drinking Kool-Aid to mean like just accepting something that's crazy, and I thought it had something to do with the Branch Davidian church and what happened in Waco. And I think maybe because sometimes people talk about Jonestown and Waco in the same breath. So I learned about that for the first time by myself in my living room watching this this heartbreaking documentary. But yeah, some of those folks drank it willingly. Some of them were forcibly injected or forcibly fed the poison, and that includes all of the children involved. Over 900 people died in this, and that made it the largest intentional mass casualty of Americans until 9/11.
Yeah, it's dark. I will say I don't know if I even got through that whole documentary because it's rough. And I will say I knew that it was a Jonestown massacre that the Kool-Aid thing referenced. I did not know until I watched that same documentary that it was 900 people. The footage of like where they were and all the bodies after. It's so, and what they did to the kids, I sobbed too. I cried too. It's so dark.
I couldn't take it. And some people survived and some people escaped, which is why we know what went down. They're also recordings of it. It's just terrible.
Yeah, it's awful. It's awful. But yeah, so that's the Kool-Aid reference for anyone who didn't know. He then starts to clip one of the women's fingernails, and while he's doing this, he explains that he keeps the women cold and hungry for the same reason that the church goes to Haiti after a hurricane to hand out Bibles, because it's easier to control someone who has lost everything. As he's doing this, he cuts off the finger of the woman who went off script, and Sister Paxton asks why he does this, and he says, the question is, why do you all let me?
Let me. Fuck you, buddy. Oh my God. I hate him so much. Also, I'm not 100% sure, but I think the finger he cut off was the same one that she put to her lips and went shh after she said it's not real.
Oh, you're probably right. Wow, that's crazy. But yes, F this guy. He's the worst. Sister Paxton says she's sorry to the woman and that she'll get them out of there. And Mr. Reed comes over to comfort a crying Sister Paxton, telling her that she's let religion dictate every single decision of her life. He then says they even dictate the garments she wears under her clothes. Sister Paxton then goes, what? And then Mr. Reed says, your magic underwear. And she stabs him in the throat with a letter opener.
Fuck yeah, Mormon girl, get his ass.
It was so good. I mean, I hoped it was coming. I was so glad it happened. He then makes the rookie mistake of pulling a letter opener out from his throat while Sister Paxton runs back upstairs. There's this cool shot where Sister Paxton's climbing out of the hole in the floor, and it zooms out to make it look like she's climbing out of the wooden replica of the house that Mr. Reed made upstairs.
Yeah, I loved this shot. It also reminded me greatly of the trauma dioramas in Hereditary, because we do see a little bit of that same sort of thing in that movie.
Yes, we do. And it's probably for the same reason that they're inside this game or this puzzle being toyed with and controlled. It's just that in this version, it's happening by a literal man and not a demon. Sister Paxton then bursts into the room with the replica and she tries to barricade the door. And then she runs through, there's an additional door in this room, and she goes through it and she realizes that it just circles back into the basement. And it's super confusing. I have no idea how this house was built.
I think making this crazy house is what he actually spent all those years doing, because he clearly wasn't reading or researching what he pretended to.
Oh my God, you're so right. You're 1,000% correct. I don't care what anyone else says. That's what he was doing.
I love it when you say that, just so you know.
I'll say it more. Just kidding. She goes back into the room that she just came out of, and she sees a Dante's Inferno picture on the wall, which is a reference back to earlier when Mr. Reed says that the only way out is down, and when Sister Paxton said that the only way out is through. And I actually think this is another trick by Mr. Reed. I think he purposely put it there so that any woman that made it to this part of the game or into this room would assume that they have to go back down through the basement to get out.
I think it's all pretense. He doesn't know shit. He has a lot of props and he's evil. He's evil Carrot Top.
You think I'm giving him too much credit? That's
yes.
Fair. That's fair. Well, regardless of if it's a trick or not, she goes back downstairs to the basement and looks down through the hole and is contemplating going back into it. And she turns around and decides not to, but as she turns around, Mr. Reed stabs her in the stomach and she falls back onto the floor and she's holding her stomach in pain as both her and Mr. Reed bleed out. Mr. Reed looks at her and tells her to pray for them. And Sister Paxton says, prayer doesn't work, which totally reminded me of our conversation from Mother of Flies and that one scene of Mother of Flies.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. She asks if he's ever heard of the Great Prayer Experiment, where they divided patients into two groups, those who received prayers and those who didn't. The results were conclusive that prayer doesn't work, but she still thinks it's beautiful that they all pray for each other, even though it doesn't make a difference. She thinks it's just nice for people to think about someone other than themselves, even if it's him. And I loved it.
This also, she's referencing a real study. This was done back in 2006. The patients who knew that they were being prayed for had worse complications after this specific medical procedure. So it is real.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I assumed it was a wash. That's crazy that they had worse complications.
No, and I will link the study. I think probably there's been some other writings about it, but you could maybe argue that people who were being asked if they knew they were being prayed for maybe felt more pressure to get better so maybe their complications are worse. It could also be that the people who were being prayed for maybe didn't follow some of their aftercare directions as closely because they believed that God would save them. I'm purely speculating here. I guess what I'm saying is the study showed this. That doesn't prove
it doesn't
or
mean
disprove.
Prayer makes things worse.
Right. They weren't actually accidentally cursing the patients.
Right. No, I never thought that for a second. I think it's probably more along the lines of maybe the patients were more relaxed or more stressed, like you said, because they knew they were receiving prayer. Sister Paxton then begins to pray as Mr. Reed drags himself across the room to her. He lays his head on her chest, and it looks like he's about to take a fatal blow to her with his box cutter when suddenly he's smacked in the head with a post with nails in it from earlier.
Once again, fuck yeah, Mormon girl, get his ass.
Sister Paxton looks up to see a barely alive Sister Barnes standing there with the wooden board from earlier. She then falls over and dies, and Sister Paxton takes a second to say goodbye. Sister Paxton goes upstairs and rips apart the replica of the house, looking for a way out until she notices a little window at the end of a hallway. She then goes and kicks that window open and climbs out of it with her phone, which, as she lands on the ground, it still doesn't have service. She stumbles away into this beautiful snowy landscape, and the sun's rising just behind her, and there's hopeful music playing. She's clearly exhausted and bleeding, and she gets to a point where she kneels down in the grass and looks at her phone again, but it must not be working because she doesn't use it to make a call. She then looks down at her hand, and she sees a butterfly on her finger, exactly where she said she'd want to come back later if she dies. But then all of a sudden, the music cuts. It's silent. The butterfly's gone. The wind's blowing, and she looks at her hand and then looks up at the sky. End of movie, and Knocking on Heaven's Door by Sophie Thatcher starts to play, which is yet another iteration, and I love this movie.
I did not realize that was Sophie Thatcher singing. That's amazing.
Yeah, again, another captions giving me some useful information. But I have to ask you, how did you interpret this ending? What do you think actually happened?
I think it's done on purpose to leave it a little vague. Did she actually see a butterfly after a snowstorm in Colorado? Was it all in her mind? Will she always believe it was Sister Barnes saying goodbye? Personally, I think she definitely escaped. She saved all the others. Then she left the Mormon church. She started a safe house for abused women, and she married a woman who looks just like Sophie Thatcher. That's what happened. No one can take it from me. I'm running through the belief door.
I love that because I want to believe it. In my heart of hearts, I want to believe that that is what happened, but I can't. I keep thinking she probably died. She probably died in that gross basement, and all those women probably died in those cages, but at least Mr. Reed died as well. But I think it's a really sad, terrible ending, and I think she was hallucinating her escape. But I want to believe what you believe, and maybe I'll join you.
This is me showing up at your front door with my book of the ending of Heretic and my little badge saying Sister Eleanor is here to give you the good news.
The good news, Sister Paxton is alive. Anyway, on that note, so we dug very deeply into the plot, but let's dig a little deeper. What have you unearthed in Hugh Grant's creepy, leaky basement for us?
Okay, so I dug so deep on this that we might have to change the name of this episode to Horror Archaeology. I am going to talk about the inspiration. I'm going to talk about the reaction to the movie. I'm going to talk about Mr. Reed's, I'll be generous and call it his thesis. And then I'm going to tell you who I think Mr. Reed actually is. And then I'll finish up with something really interesting about the writer-director and what they did at the end of this movie.
I'm really excited. Let's do it.
So first, the inspiration. According to an interview they did with Screen Daily, the writer-director team, that's Scott Beck and Brian Woods, say that they took inspiration from two films. One is called Inherit the Wind from 1960, and one is called Contact from 1997. Have you seen either of these movies?
I have not. I think I've heard of Contact, but I couldn't tell you anything about either of these movies from the top of my head now.
I watched them both to prepare for this episode, which is why I had to ask you for that extension on the deadline.
I love it.
So Inherit the Wind is basically a fictionalized version of what became known as the Scopes Monkey Trial, but it was also used as a criticism of McCarthyism. The Scopes Monkey Trial was a real case from 1925 where a Tennessee high school teacher was put on trial for teaching the science of human evolution in class because, at that time, it was illegal in public schools, mind you, to contradict the state's specific interpretation of their particular version of the Christian Bible's explanation of human origin. Can you imagine the government attacking teachers in public schools or forcing religion on students?
Ugh, I hate this. You know what? I'll use this moment to say go to your local bookstore and buy some books from the banned book section.
Yes, and support your libraries.
Yes.
Okay, so what is McCarthyism? Well, children, in the U.S., it was/is the political repression and targeting of anyone who is considered left-wing by a right-wing government. This is specifically referring to a fear campaign during the 1940s and 50s, but probably a lot longer. This campaign went after everyone, to include public servants and, yes, even people in the movie business. This was done through a tactic called blacklisting, where basically the government targeted these folks and pressured Hollywood to ban them from the industry. And a bunch of cowards in the industry complied. The guy who did the screenplay for Inherit the Wind was in fact blacklisted and had to use a pseudonym. So in the movie, you have this faith versus science sort of debate going on, and you've got Christians who believe in their God, but also believe in science and reason, versus these hardline fundamentalist Christians.
That's crazy. I could absolutely see where the inspiration from that movie is in here. Was it a good movie? Did you enjoy the watch?
I enjoyed it more than I thought I would, yes. It's got Gene Kelly in it, who's pretty well known. And it also has another actor named Spencer Tracy, and he plays the lawyer who's like trying to, defend the teacher. He's very fun. He's a fun character. So yeah, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Maybe I'll have to give it a watch.
Yeah. Okay, and you said you hadn't seen the movie Contact?
I have not, no.
Okay, so this one is a 1997 film based on the novel by an American astronomer and planetary scientist, Carl Sagan. Have you heard of him or read any of his book? Okay.
I have not read his books, but I do know who he is, yes.
I haven't read Contact, but I did read his book, The Demon Haunted World, which I strongly recommend. It is nonfiction, but entire pages of that book feel like prophecy reading them now. It's good, but it's a little depressing in the context of where we are today. The film Contact deals with themes of humanity's religious belief and scientific skepticism in the face of encountering intelligent alien life for the first time. The movie is critical of religious extremism, but also pretty much lands on the view that religion or spiritual belief are not necessarily incompatible with science, kind of similar to where Inherit the Wind seems to land. I think both films' influence shows up pretty clearly in Heretic because the criticism from Mr. Reed is pretty strong. He doesn't sugarcoat anything, but the missionaries, though they might have their own doubts about specific aspects of their religion, they come across as both sincere in their faith and genuinely kind and caring people. So I think the writers managed to be sympathetic to the individuals, those sincere believers of particular organized religions without giving the institutions themselves a pass. Did you get the same feeling?
I did. Yeah, I did. Because when I watch most movies or things like this, it almost feels like half the time the overly religious, cult character is the bad guy. But this does a good job of making you, root for these women and, like them. But like you said, it doesn't give the organization a pass.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little bit more pretty soon about how I think they achieved that. So, speaking of religious extremists, another source of inspiration for the movie from this writer-director team was what they called their fear of people with utmost certainty. In an interview that they did with Gizmodo, they said that they found people who are very rigid in their certainty and their thinking, they find them kind of terrifying because most people just don't live like that. We're constantly changing points of view and even what we view as moral. So to encounter someone who can't fathom that they might be wrong about anything, that's pretty scary, isn't it?
It's so scary. And you know why it's scary? It's because they can't be reasoned with. It doesn't matter what evidence you present to them. It doesn't matter. Reality could hit them in the face and they're still going to tell you that they believe in what they believe in. And that's how you get cults
and conspiracy theories and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in an interview that they did with Deadline, they said that they didn't think it was intentional, but they definitely think you can view their film as influenced by fairy tales, or more specifically, religious fairy tales, aka parables, which I also think comes across in the movie. When they first show up at the house, it feels like they showed up at the evil witch's house and they're about to get eaten. There's a little bit of a fairy tale element to it.
Oh, the pie is very fairy tale. The poison pie is very fairy tale. And maybe a little bit of the map or maze of the house too.
Yeah, for sure.
So I see that.
All right. So speaking of terrifying certainty, let's talk about some of the reactions to the film. First, did you know that both of the actors who played the missionaries, Chloe East and Sophie Thatcher, were both raised Mormon?
I did not. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I mean, that's cool in the way that they then chose them to be the actresses for this movie. That's wild.
Yeah, they weren't specifically looking for people from that community, but it just happened that way. Yeah.
But they found him. Well, and I think they casted 2 amazing women.
Yeah, they were perfect. So the actors talk about this in an interview that they did with Entertainment Weekly. They said their experience informed their acting, and they also talk about how they wanted to do justice to this, like the sincerity of the people that they know from that faith group. And it wasn't just the actors, because one of the writer-directors, Brian Woods, married into a Mormon family.
This is crazy. This is so cool.
Yeah, in that same Entertainment Weekly article, he said, quote, "It's so easy in media, especially with Mormons, to kind of paint a comedic picture because there's this naivete, there's elements inherent in the Mormon culture that could be comical to outside eyes. We're not necessarily shying away from that because, again, I came into a Mormon family and there were things that were amusing to me as an outsider. And so we were just pushing those buttons. But the deeper we got into the Mormon culture, the more obvious it became that there's an intelligence and a warmth and a sincerity and all these beautiful things that we really respected." End quote. So do you think the movie hit the mark here?
I think so. I definitely think so. I will say, I mean, I've known about Mormonism for a while, but obviously my most recent cultural influence of Mormons is Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, which is like the farthest thing from Mormon you can pretty much get, but still claim to be Mormon.
You should bring that up. So, how did Mormons not connected with the movie react? I read a really interesting article from The Guardian about this, and if I said the names Whitney Levitt and Whitney Rose,
Yes, I know.
they are from, and I can't believe I'm the one doing the reality TV reference here. They're from The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives and The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. One of them is an ex-Mormon and the other one is still practicing. And they attended a screening for this movie. And I want to show you a picture and you can describe to the listeners what you see.
Okay, so it's the 2 of them in front of the doors from the movie, the purple disbelief door and the green belief door. They're both, I mean, dressed to the nines. It's the 2 Whitneys.
Yeah, so they saw this movie and kind of played into the fact that one of them is no longer practicing and the other one is. So they took this adorable photo in front of the disbelief and belief door. I thought it was cute. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, the one that still believes is in front of the belief door and the one that doesn't is in front of the disbelief door. Oh,
yeah, it's so cute. I found that. I was like, well, I have to talk about this.
You have to. And to tie it back what I was saying earlier is in my mind, the Mormon faith has always been kind of silly, and especially because of that show. But this movie made me think like, oh, maybe there's more to it.
Yeah, it gets pilloried quite a bit because there are very comical elements of it. And we actually know a lot about the history of when it started. So it's very easy to, to get into all that. But we don't have to do that on this podcast. You can go to a different podcast for that. The Guardian also interviewed some other former Mormons about their views of the movie. And there's a lot of praise for how realistic the portrayal of the Mormon missionaries are in the film. It's definitely worth a read. Oh, what is not worth a read, in my opinion, is an incredibly disingenuous statement a representative of the LDS Church put in the newspaper that it owns called Deseret News. And tell me, Charlie, if you can spot the glaring issue here. This is from a spokesperson for the church named Doug Anderson. Quote, "Like many Hollywood productions, this is a work of fiction and is not based on actual events. It portrays the graphically violent treatment of women, including people of faith and those who provide volunteer service to their communities. Any narrative that promotes violence against women because of their faith or undermines the contributions of volunteers runs counter to the safety and well-being of our communities." End quote.
Yeah, this is not well done. I will give like the teeniest, tiniest bit of credit where sometimes when people digest media like this, there are copycats, and maybe that was their concern. Beyond that, they have lost the plot.
I'll go a lot further than you, and I'll say that if you watched that movie and thought it promoted violence against women because of their faith, or really for any other reason, you are telling on yourself, bro.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
And they never talk about like undermining the contributions of volunteers. They never even talk about really any of the charity work that Mormons often do. So what are you talking about? is gross.
Yeah, it is gross. I don't like the statement at all. It could definitely have been worded far better.
Yeah. Christians are often fond of saying, love the sinner, hate the sin. And for a lot of us who have moved on from those hyper-controlling religions that we were raised in, I think it's now love the believer and hate the institution. And personally, I think this comes across in the movie. The institutions are corrupt, but the people inside of them are still people.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I mean, at least for most of the people in these institutions. Obviously, there's going to be corrupt people everywhere, believers, non-believers, etc. But there are some truly good people that do take these values and use them positively in their life for good reason.
Yeah. So enough about all that. Let's talk about what Mr. Reed gets wrong about the similarities between all the myths that he brought up as, proof that this was all just an iteration. And let me preface this by admitting that the nature of this format means some of this analysis will be a little superficial. Please keep in mind, some of the gods that I'm about to talk about were worshipped for literally thousands of years ago. So trying to bottle all that up into a clean narrative for the last third of a horror movie podcast is, I'll admit, maybe a little ambitious. But I can promise you that I have given this a lot more academic vigor than Mr. Reed ever did, which I argue isn't really any. But anyway, all that to say, please don't sick Dan McClellan from TikTok on me or whatever. I am doing my best.
I love this. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, we are just a podcast that tries to keep it under, 2 hours if we can. So, give us some grace, but we'll post our dissertations later.
Okay. So I'm not sure, but I think Osiris is one of the gods that was pictured on the murals of Mr. Reed's Wall of Gods. Osiris is an ancient Egyptian god and judge of the dead. In his story, he was murdered by his brother Set, and he was resurrected by Isis, his clever wife and fellow ruler. She basically makes him a mummy, and through the magic of that, he is resurrected and has eternal life in the afterlife, which he can also give to others. So his story is actually the entire myth behind the practice of mummification in ancient Egypt. Charlie, did you have an ancient Egypt phase as a kid?
Of course I did. I feel like every child went through this, and if they didn't, they really missed out. I had the little, the big golden mummy book with, the jewel in the middle that you can still find it in the bookstores. I feel like everyone had it. And of course, I wanted to be an archaeologist. I wanted to be able to read hieroglyphs. I wore a little, hieroglyph necklace for the longest time. It's all because of the movie, The Mummy, if we're really getting into it.
Yeah, I think that influenced our generation.
It did. I assume you also had an ancient Egypt phase.
Oh, yes. I was painting hieroglyphics. I was painting mummies, watercolor mummies and all that stuff. I loved it.
I will say, even to this day, when one of my big things is whenever I visit a big city, I have to go to the art museum. And one of the first things I do if I'm running short on time, I make sure I see the ancient Egypt exhibit and the Greek pottery and statue part of it as well. So still love it.
Yeah.
Still love it.
Beautiful. So kings and others believe that they would unite with Osiris after death and gain eternal life. There are claims that Osiris is sometimes celebrated as being born around late December, but that's not really true because the way ancient Egyptian calendars worked was each month was exactly 30 days. So that meant that every year was about 5 days short of an astronomical year. So to fix this, they had something called epigomenal days, where they'd basically slap an extra 5 days at the end of the year to their calendar. But this also didn't solve the problem because a solar year is 365.25 days. So that version of the calendar would shift by 1 day every 4 years. Anyway, Osiris was born on the first of these little Band-Aid days, so not on what we would eventually know as the 25th of December. So does this sound like the story of Jesus, his birth, his resurrection, and the hope that his believers have in everlasting life? I mean, maybe if you squint?
Yeah, that's not the vibe I'm getting at all from this. I mean, yes, something was resurrected. The end of the similarities. That's all. That's really it. That's all I'm seeing there.
Now, an Egyptian god that Mr. Reed does mention is Horus. He says Horus walked on water, had 12 disciples, and was crucified, just like Jesus. Horus is the ancient Egyptian god of kings, healing, the sun, and more. But he didn't have 12 disciples, nor was he crucified. He didn't walk on water, but there is this really interesting story about him making a bet with Set, the man who killed his father, Osiris. He challenged him to a boat race, but the boats had to be made of stone. So Set's boat sank immediately, but Horus had a boat that was only painted to look like a stone. So he cheated, and I guess that's like walking on water or something. As for the virgin birth, his conception story is fascinating. We talked earlier about Osiris being murdered by Set. Well, his wife, Isis, found all of the pieces of Osiris after Set slaughtered him and spread his body parts around. She mummified him to bring him back to life. But there was one little problem. She couldn't find what Our Lady of Gaga might refer to as his disco stick. So she made one for him, either out of gold or something else, and she brought him back to life, and they tested out his new equipment, which worked so well that they had little baby Horus. Is that a virgin birth? Maybe if you squint at it, which you should, Charlie, to give them their privacy. Are you squinting?
What a wild story. Wait, I love that. Like, of all the pieces of him, she got to remake that one. That's so funny.
Yeah, and I'm now imagining Isis just being like, oh, we don't need that old thing. I totally can't find it. I'll make a better one.
Yeah, that's so funny. Also, you mentioned the stone boat thing. This is a random little fact, but did you know that the civil engineers at the Air Force Academy every year have a concrete canoe race where they make canoes out of concrete and race them?
How did I not know this?
I just learned about it recently, but I think it's funny. I don't know how they do it. I've not witnessed it, but some do float.
Maybe they are Egyptian gods. If there's any Air Force civil engineers out there, please tell us if you are also an ancient deity. This is important information. Okay, so what about Odin? He is an ancient Norse god, also regarded as a god of the dead, among many other things. In a collection of Old Norse poems called the Havamel, Odin says that he was stabbed with a spear, and he sacrificed himself to himself and hung on the world tree, Yggdrasil. And he did this for 9 days. He did this in order to learn the secrets of magic runes. So do parts of this sound similar to the story of Jesus being crucified? Again, maybe, if you squint, I guess. But also, the important thing to remember about this is that Christianity and Norse beliefs coexisted for a while in some regions of Europe. We actually talked a little bit about this in our episode on the ritual. You had this new religion, Christianity, moving into areas where the Norse faith was prevalent, and then eventually Christianity becomes the dominant practice. So is this an iteration, or is it just people blending together and adapting stories over time, or even just recognizing elements of their stories in each other because that's part of what it means to be in a society?
I will say, okay, so I see a little bit more of a similarity with this one. Like, he sacrificed himself, hung himself on a tree. But here's the thing, like, crucifixion, hanging on a tree, it's not that uncommon, or at least like it wasn't that uncommon in that time. So by saying just because someone hung on a tree makes him the same as Jesus who was crucified means everyone who is crucified is the same as Jesus. Like, it just doesn't, just because it's something that happened doesn't mean it makes them the same.
Right, exactly. Okay. What about Krishna? He's a major Hindu god of protection and love, among other things. Mr. Reed says he was born of a virgin, he was a carpenter, he was baptized in a river, and he rose from the dead to ascend to heaven. That's pretty compelling, except basically none of that is present in the mythology. He's virgin-born, if you don't count his 7 siblings before him. He was not a carpenter, he was a cow herder. He wasn't baptized in a river, but he did ascend to the spiritual realm of Vishnu, who's a supreme god of a particular Hindu tradition. That realm is called Vaikunta, and he ascends there after being fatally shot by a hunter who thought he was a deer. Also, his birthday is late August or early September. So yeah, Krishna is a Virgo, baby. So what do you think? Does Krishna's life sound like an iteration of the life of Jesus? I mean, in this case, I don't think so, not even if you squint.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how one is virgin born if they have 7 siblings. And yeah, not a carpenter. Never baptized. Nope. I'm not seeing anything here. Not with this one.
Nope. Okay, what about Mithras? He was an ancient Roman cult religion that was inspired by an even more ancienter Iranian god, Mithra. Mr. Reed says he was marked by a cross and performed miracles. He was also said to be born around winter solstice, so close to Christmas. But as far as being born from a virgin, he was like hatched from a rock. and he was born holding a knife and a torch. That whole marked by the cross thing is not true. There's some evidence that initiates received a mark on their foreheads after a ritual, but there isn't any evidence that it was a cross, nor was Mithras associated with a cross. As for the performing miracles thing, there are some reliefs that may depict an image of Mithras striking a rock and causing water to flow from it. So, okay, maybe that's a miracle, but to me, that sounds like a Moses-shaped miracle, if you know your Old Testament stories, and not a Jesus-shaped one. So, with all of this, does the birth and life of Mithras sound like the Jesus story? Maybe if you squint. And before you ask, no, the word myth does not come from Mithras. It's an entirely different root word. And another thing to note is, similar to the situation with Odin, Mithras followers and Jesus followers coexisted in ancient Rome. So there might have been a little bleed over, but Mr. Reed's statements are way off.
That's crazy. I mean, I assumed that there was some truth to what he was saying, but there really isn't. So he just assumed that the people he was speaking to didn't know anything about what he was saying.
I'm going to tell you, it is stupider than that, and we'll get to it.
Oh, so I would like to take this moment to introduce my theory here that Greek gods are just an ancient version of what we call Marvel superheroes today. And what I mean by this is the Marvel universe is so intricate at this point, and there's so many versions of it. There's so many layers. There's comic books about it. There's movies. There's books. There's all kinds of stuff, to the point where I think enough will survive that a few thousand years from now, someone will find the ancient DVDs of the Dead Sea or whatever of the Marvel superheroes and think that they are the gods that the people of our time worshipped. And people will spend an eternity trying to figure out what they all meant and why we thought this way, but really it was just some fanfic of superheroes, and that's why I don't really subscribe to any of this.
I want to see the Deadpool cult that starts and the temple is built in his honor.
That would be so fun. I mean, but really, I mean, the Deadpool cult would be like the Loki cult to the extreme, right?
I think that fits. And I absolutely think that your theory works. When we think of gods or superheroes, we think of immortality and magical powers. So this becomes Messiah to some, myth to others, and the Marvel movie universe to us. So why does December 25th keep popping up? Was it a stolen pagan holiday? Not really. You will see that claim online a lot. December 25th in the Roman calendar was the winter solstice. So you have this kind of very convenient symbolism of a god bringing light to the world by arriving on the longest night, defeating darkness, etc. A solstice is an observable and very important astrological phenomenon. So it does not surprise me to think that humanity has placed extra significance to these events and use them to honor their gods, or really just, keep telling the stories that they want to keep alive about their culture and values. So basically, it doesn't surprise me that lots of cultures view solstices as birthdays of their favorite gods. That would be like us launching a podcast on Friday the 13th.
Yes, I agree completely.
Okay, given all of this, what about Mr. Reed? Did he really spend decades of his life laboring over the entire human record of history, religion, philosophy, all of that in the hopes of discovering the one true religion? As much time as I spent looking at this, it certainly wasn't decades. So I just want to give you my theory of who Mr. Reed actually is. This does not come from the writers. This is Eleanor's personal view. He isn't a scholar. He isn't a truth seeker. He isn't even interesting. He's a misogynist loser who pretends to be well-read, but actually read exactly one book and built his entire shitty personality around it while oozing fake intellectualism.
I'm so excited. Which book? What book? Tell me.
So, in my reading of the mythology of all these gods, I saw quickly that if you just Google Mr. Reed's claim verbatim, what most often comes up is like these huffy rebuttal pieces, mostly from Christian apologists. They're like, his claim about this was wrong, therefore Jesus. But I also saw references to one book, and that book is a real book, and it's called The Christ Conspiracy, The Greatest Story Ever Sold by Dorothy Milne Murdoch. This 1999 book argued that there was never a historical person named Jesus who was murdered by the government, but instead this figure is an amalgamation or an iteration of other deities like, are you ready? Mithras, Krishna, Horus, and more. This book got shredded by scholars, and not just by huffy religious apologists. It's badly sourced. Parts of it appear to be completely made up, and the sources that she does cite appear to be totally misunderstood.
This is brilliant. It must be. This must be it. He read one book and he spent the rest of the time building a house and tricking women into his gross dungeon. Like that. Ew, what a gross human being. So he thought what he was saying was real. He was just too dumb to actually research any of it. That's crazy.
It would certainly seem so. So yeah, it's from one book. All these claims, they tend to pop up in viral social media posts, usually around Christmas or Easter, but they're largely incorrect or at least very incomplete. Also, the funniest fucking thing about this book is if you go look it up right now, it has a revised edition that it boasts, and I quote, extensive updates such as new credible evidence, end quote. Like,
we finally put some evidence in our book about that was supposed to be credible this entire time. Gosh. Crazy.
And just to be clear, you don't need to be a Christian or a Mormon or anything really to think that there probably was a real historical radical guy named Jesus who the government murdered. Governments love murdering radicals, and people love martyrs, and they love building followings and beliefs around them. So you don't have to be religious to think that something like that happened. Anyway, that's who I think Mr. Reed is, because you can't be this wrong or this certain unless you just read one thing and decided never to investigate it further.
Yes. It has to be. Now I want to read this book not for its like knowledge, but to find all the similarities between his his arguments and the arguments of the book, because I'm sold that's he read one book and he decided that was everything he needed to know, and he used it as a excuse to murder, torture, and do awful things to women.
Yeah, it has to be it. Because the way I approached this was I went and just read the stories about the gods themselves. And I'm like, I'm not seeing what he's claiming. So then I just Googled what he literally said. And like I said, I kept bringing me to like articles from like Christianity Today or whatever their magazine is. And among others, I'm like, okay, that's an apologist saying that this person's wrong. And then finally, after several attempts at this, I started to see this exactly one book referenced.
That's crazy. I will say I did some very light Googling. I didn't spoil anything, but everything I did Google was just like various churches and institutions responding angrily to this movie, which I think it's funny that this movie upset so many people for the wrong reasons.
As is often the case with some of those institutions.
Yes.
Okay, and I promise that we are almost done, but I want to talk about something really interesting that the writer-director team did, and I'm going to ask you if we can copy them, actually. So you may not have seen it, because I definitely didn't, but they are the first to ever put the statement, "No generative AI was used in the making of this film," in the credits.
Oh, I didn't see that, but I like it.
So in an interview that they did with Variety, Brian Woods gets right to the point, and he calls generative AI, quote, an algorithm jumbling a bunch of shit together and then spitting it out as art. It's not human, and it's borderline theft at some level. I think the idea that an algorithm can just scrape all of human history and art off the internet, repackage it, regurgitate it, spit it out, and someone else can use that to create a profit, I don't know why that's legal, end quote.
I mean, yes, I agree. AI is so new. This is just like when the internet came out, like, or was invented, I should say. People at first used it for all this crazy stuff. Some people hated it. Some people loved it. Eventually rules were put into place. Now it's become what we know of it today. I think and hope that'll happen with AI too. But yes, I do agree that I don't like AI in a creative space. I don't like it replacing art. I don't like it for especially art that you use to profit off of. That's not cool. So yes, not a fan of the AI for those purposes.
Yeah, art that you don't pay someone to make and then you profit off of it because you stole, like AI is just stealing from
other people ideas, other artists, and then jumbling it all together in its own weird thing that doesn't have 5 fingers, you know. Yeah.
He went a little bit further and he said, quote, what's being created with generative AI and video, it's amazing we could create that technology. Now let's bury it underground with nuclear weapons because it might kill us all, end quote.
That's kind of what I like that. That's funny.
So I'm glad you like it because I was thinking of adding that disclaimer to our show's end credits. What do you think?
I'm down. I mean, I think I've seen 5 now accusations that we're AI, and I promise you, we're not. We put a lot of work and effort into this, and we actually really love doing it. So we won't ever use AI. So I'm down to put it in.
Good, because I already re-recorded and added it.
You added it in?
I did. I am asking first, but I did record it and it's ready to go.
That's okay. Stick it on this episode. I'm down.
Good. And yeah, I too have seen some of those comments about asking it for AI. I think it's good to be skeptical of new media. And we don't show our faces yet. Although technically, if you follow our TikTok, you have seen parts of me, especially early on.
That makes it sound so...
No, I'm doing that on purpose. You've seen parts of me on TikTok. Follow us on TikTok. Engage with us, listeners.
Oh my God.
But no, I can understand a little bit of skepticism, and I encourage that. I do think some of the comments are perhaps in a little more good faith than others, but there's always going to be people like that out there. So,
yeah, I agree. Not seeing our faces probably does throw people for a loop. We just enjoy our privacy at the moment. And I will say a lot of those comments were people legitimately asking like, hey, are you AI? And if we responded and said, we are not, they were like, cool. And that was it. So those people are fine. I appreciate you asking. But the people that straight up accuse us, we're not. So go away.
Yeah, I'll take your Turing test right now. I don't give a shit. So yeah, we, just to be clear, we do not use generative AI at any part of this period. It's not in our logo. It's not in our music. It's not in the scripts. It's not in any of it. This is just us. And we will not use generative AI because I'm the one watching the movie and I want to talk to my bestie about it. And that's what we're doing here.
That's exactly what we're doing. That's why we started this. We knew we were going to chat about horror movies and we thought, hey, we'll record it, throw it up, see if people like it. Turns out you do.
And yeah, they do love it, which is great. And as both of us probably have a little bit of ADHD, like having that date, like we have to record on this date, therefore we have to finish figuring everything out. Like that's been so helpful in structuring these conversations.
It has, because I mean there's stuff on my list that you've told me to watch 10 years ago that I still haven't gotten around to. So
yes, it's I've been playing the long game of forcing you to watch these movies.
Well, it worked.
All right, so Charlie, now that we're through this, what did we unearth in this sandbox of ours? What do you think this movie is? Is it horror, tragedy?
I actually like the idea of it being tragedy, but it's horror. It's, at least in my mind, it is sad. I think it's so sad, but I think it's sad because I believe Sister Paxton and Sister Barnes both died at the end in the basement of Mr. Reed's home. But it's definitely creepy and it's scary because people like Mr. Reed exist. Granted, they probably don't have the means to build labyrinth homes to trick women into, thank goodness, but they exist and they're real and it's scary. So horror for me. What about you?
Definitely horror. And like you said, it's horror because these creepy, gross, controlling men do exist. And even if they never act on it in this particular way, there's other horrors that they will release on women and society. And that's horrific. The movie itself, very well done horror. It's scary. It's unsettling. But there's a lot of depth to it too. And that's why I loved it. And that's why this one might be our longest episode. Or at least pretty close.
Yeah, I definitely didn't anticipate the length and depth of this movie. But it's we had to do it because there was just so much to talk about and I'm glad we did.
Yeah. And when I figured out my theory of the case, I sat in my office cackling because I was like, oh my God, I think I texted you. I was like, I just figured out who he is.
Yeah, I think you did. And I love that you did. I mean, what an incredible find. I can only imagine how cool it was to find that book and be like, oh my gosh, all of his theories and things come from this one book. This man is just dumb and gross. So
yeah. And I love how even though the missionaries didn't have access to that book necessarily, they saw through him too. So I love that.
They did. Yeah, I loved it too. But okay. I think that does it for us today, listeners. So may the horrors persist.
Whether you believe in them or not. Thanks for listening to Horror Sandbox. No generative AI was used in the making of this podcast. For show notes, credits, and contact info, check out our website at www.horrorsandbox.com. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Horror Sandbox. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this podcast with all the horror fans in your life.